No Greens leader has ever agreed to come on this show. I'm too evil or they're too scared. Today, that changes. Richard Di Natale took over the Greens leadership 4 months ago, promising to make it more pragmatic. And he joins me now. Thank you so much for your time. What signal are you sending by coming on this show that every other Greens leader is banned? Even Bill Shorten won't come on.
Well, maybe they've got more sense than I do. Look, what better way of spending Father's Day than talking to you, Andrew?
No, but you are sending a signal here, and I wonder what it is. For example, I think it seems to me your aim, right, is to replace Labor as the main party of the left.
No. I mean, we don't see the world in those terms. You might. Our aim is to give people another option. And whether they be Labor voters, Liberal voters, former Democrat voters, Palmer voters, it doesn't matter. You stand up on behalf of what you believe, good policy, and the rest takes care of itself. Yeah, but Labor sees you as a great threat, of course, on its left, and has gone to the left a bit to try to, address that. You don't see yourself edging out Labor as the natural home of voters of the left? I think, as I said when I took on the leadership, we are the natural home of progressive mainstream voters. A lot of those progressive mainstream people are Liberal voters, many of them are Labor voters. In the end, if you get trapped into this sort of left-right, this is where we sit on the political spectrum, I think you're not doing what you're there to do, and that is to try and put the national interest first. My view is stand up on behalf of the values you believe are important, good policy, and the politics just takes care of itself. But besides, there also seems to be a reaction to the sort of ultra-tribalism of previous leaders, without naming anyone, but, that it's all a club and you don't break out, you don't negotiate with Tony Abbott, for example. Oh, well... You've changed that. Well, we've done that in the past as well. I think that's... Not to this extent. Well, when you've got something like the Medical Research Future Fund, I don't know why you wouldn't support a positive initiative. I don't care if it comes from Tony Abbott or from Bill Shorten. It was a decent initiative. It was important to come out and support it. And I think your job there is to make sure you support good policy and put the politics to one side. Now, I think you've missed the chance to distinguish yourself, because I do think, when you're competing for Labor left-wing voters, your first aim is to knock off Labor. That's what I would have thought. And I think you missed the chance to make a clear distinction, and an important one, between you and Labor, and that's with Dyson Heydon. He heads the Royal Commission on Union Corruption. Labor's been smearing him as biased and is now trying to get the Governor-General to sack him. Shouldn't you say the Greens won't be part of this Labor cover-up for union corruption, that you are different? But that's because you see the world in this sort of, left-right, hyper-partisan, tribal way. I don't see it like that. Look, union bashing's at the moment, it's the sort of flavour of the month. My dad was a spark. He was an electrician. Workplaces are very dangerous places. There are kids who come, whose parents don't come home at night because of how unsafe they are. And unions have been an important role in improving not just the pay and conditions of workers, but the safety of workers. And so no one's arguing that. I'm not. And look, this is about union corruption, not union safety. But if there are a few bad apples, get rid of them. A few? If there are a few bad apples, get rid of them. Not if a few. Well, look, there's not if a few, there's lots. Well, that's your assertion, and you're entitled to it. There's 26 people that have been recommended for charges by the Royal Commission already. Let them be charged and let that process play out. I don't think you get anywhere by having somebody who's handpicked, who clearly has a very clear political persuasion, a clear agenda. I mean, if this was a trial, it would have been declared as a mistrial by now. And you know what? I'll take it to the court. Let's even for someone like you who has the view that you do towards the union movement, having someone like Dyson Heydon now leading the charge really just means that the findings will be dismissed and can be dismissed because of the perceptions of bias. No, because they go to a court. If there are charges, they go to a court, and the court decides. Dyson Heydon doesn't. I think the findings of the Royal Commission will be dismissed out of hand because of who's leading the charge. The unions that have fought hardest to shut down this Royal Commission have been the ETU, CFMEU and Maritime Union. Those are probably the three. Now, those three unions gave your party more than $500,000 last year. Is that why the Greens are backing this campaign to destroy the union? Our view around donations to political parties is they shouldn't be there, and that elections should be publicly funded. But that's not the playing field we have at the moment. We've got parties, Labor Party, Liberal Party, take huge amounts of money from big...
Sure, they'll do it. I'm not saying you're different.
Big corporations. And so we've got a choice to make. Do we want to compete and get people elected or not? Now, our choice is to do either what someone like Kevin Andrews does, which is you're the gambling minister effectively. You are writing gambling policy at the same time as taking donations from the gambling industry and actually announcing your policy on their website, or you take funding from an institution who stands up for the rights of working people. And
no. Look, you've made that point.
You know, the union
The
union movement are responsible for the pay and conditions that most working people enjoy.
Can I ask again?
They're responsible for people having safe workplaces. I'm not going to get into this union bashing exercise.
Your party made the link between receiving the money from gambling bodies and the Liberal Party policy. So I'm asking you, by the same token, is there a link between the $500,000 your party got from those three unions and the fact that you're trying to shut down the Royal Commission that's on those unions' tail?
We accept donations from the union movement because we have to compete. Have they asked us what?
Well, look, for example, in 2010, the Electrical Trades Union donated $200,000 to your own, as in your particular seat.
To the Victorian state campaign.
To fight your campaign. Has it asked you, Richard, can you stop the Royal Commission?
No.
Have any of those unions, the CFMU, have any of them been in contact with you?
This might be a huge surprise to you, Andrew. I haven't had a conversation
what do they expect for their money?
Leaders of the union movement. They expect people to stand up there and stand up for the rights of working people in the parliament, which is what we do. You know, I'd much rather stand up there and represent working people than be a spruiker for the mining industry, for the coal industry, for the alcohol industry, for the tobacco industry, for the gambling industry. That's the choice we've made, and I'm very proud of it.
You've seen the pictures of hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants flooding into Europe, and the tragic picture, of course, of that Syrian boy who drowned trying to get to Greece from Turkey. Doesn't this show you the danger of the sort of relaxed border policies that the Greens promote?
Really? Is that how you see? Well, you've got a 3-year-old kid being dragged out of the water because they're dead. Okay, you've got more people moving across the planet than at any other time in human history. We've got countries right around the world saying, look, we're going to have to provide these people with some help and refuge because this is a crisis. And you want to turn your back on people in that fleeing that persecution? But
I don't want to encourage more of what we're seeing.
What we do here in Australia is not going to make an iota of difference to the people fleeing Syria right now. Not an iota of difference. And
but the family wasn't fleeing Syria.
We have an opportunity to
take... But that family, you mentioned the 3-year-old boy.
We have an opportunity to take 20,000 people fleeing that conflict, registered with the UNHCR, in the same way as we did after the Tiananmen Square massacre. We had Hawke then taking 40,000 people. John Howard himself... Kosovo, East Timor, we had a standalone humanitarian intake because we recognised that people were being murdered, killed and tortured. We can do the same here, and we should.
You mentioned the 3-year-old boy, and it's a tragic story, right? Absolutely. They weren't fleeing Syria. We've
got 4 million people who have fled Syria. 250,000 killed.
This is run you a piece of tape. This family, right, were living in Turkey for 3 years in safety. The aunt of the boy lives in Canada, was going to sponsor them to come over there. They went to Europe not to flee anything. Have a look at what the aunt said the real reason for going to Europe was.
So I've been trying to help him fix his teeth. But it's gonna cost me $14,000 and up to do it. He need denture, he need teeth implant. My dad, he come up with the idea. He said to me, I think if they go to Europe for his kids and for better future, I think you should do that. And then we'll see if we can fix his teeth.
To fix his teeth?
Okay, so here's the thing, Andrew. You've got 1 in 4 people living in Lebanon who are refugees. 1 in 4. Mm-hmm. 1 in 4. Living in camps, no opportunity to get an education, to get decent healthcare, and so on. I mean, of course they're going to flee to try and improve their circumstances.
He wasn't living in camp, he was living in Istanbul.
Well, there are 4 million people. You've picked one example. There are 4 million people who have fled Syria, most of whom will be determined to be genuine refugees. What's your solution?
My solution is to make
solution?
those countries safe for the people, as in go to Syria, intervene where you can.
Drop some bombs. Let's drop some
on
bombs
the
on
Islamic
Syria.
State.
Let's drop some bombs on Syria.
Why,
we'll
who do you
fix
think
it
they're
that
fleeing?
way.
You don't think they're fleeing the Islamic State?
Have you heard of the Assad regime?
Have you heard of the Islamic State?
250,000 deaths directly as a consequence of the Assad regime. Islamic State in Syria is not the main game. The main game in Syria is the Assad regime. The
Islamic State is not the main game?
In Syria, it is not. More people have died as a result of the Assad regime than from Islamic State. Fact. Now, it might suit your domestic political agenda, but if you're going to have a genuine debate about what's going on in that country, you would acknowledge that Assad and his regime is the primary factor that has contributed to the movement of 4 million people out of that country and the deaths of 250,000 people.
Richard
Countless
Natale,
other left homeless.
we're out of time. I thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime.
Coming up, the panel, Peter Costello and Michael Costa.